I have the great displeasure of sharing with you that today in the US, nearly 1 million people are getting COVID every single day. That means nearly 1 in 35 people anywhere you go statistically has COVID at that point. If you're in a room of 17 people, there's about a coin flip that someone in there has COVID at that exact moment and is infectious. These are estimates from J.P. Weiland, one modeler of these numbers based on wastewater. If you don't trust this person, here's Professor Michael Horger modeling the same data, gets about the same answer, looking like we'd peak at 2 million COVID cases per day around January 10th in the US. That's horrible. Now, my main reason for sharing this is just knowing the numbers. It may not match what you see in person, and here's an example why. So there's a tweet from Sinead O'Brien who says, "Despite my best efforts, my husband has broken his no-COVID streak. It's important to note he is entirely asymptomatic and was testing himself daily because he attended an indoor event." So again, there's studies I've covered on my channel before. Nearly 50% of COVID infections are asymptomatic. You never feel anything. So in those stats of 1 out of 34 people have COVID this exact second, many of them are not feeling symptoms. So you can't go on this, how someone feels or whether they're coughing or sneezing. There are people who feel totally fine, who are breathing virus out in the air. COVID is one of the most contagious viruses we've ever seen. Sinead goes on to say that their husband attended a masked event but took a mask off to eat. And the moral of the story is masks work when they're kept on. And I've seen many, many, many stories like this. COVID is so contagious that you can take your mask off just to eat for a few minutes and you will get sick then, or there's a very high chance of getting sick. Repeated COVID infections are destroying us, and we're going to see it little by little over time. Many people have had COVID once, twice, 3 times. My perspective is if you've had it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times, you are not going to be doing very well. So here's some stories from Reddit that Twitter user Lazarus Long has compiled. This user on Twitter says, "I have a friend who's had COVID 9 or 10 times. They take a lot of precautions since getting long COVID from the first infection, but they have a young child in school and carers, so it's hard to avoid. With each infection, or most of them at least, they've developed new symptoms and their general health baseline has fallen further. They are very much not okay, almost entirely housebound and need a high level of care. Another friend with long COVID has had 5+ infections and had a similar experience. I'm not saying it happens every time for everyone, but it's grim what I've seen. Getting multiple infections can't be a good thing." Canada Stat came out with a report showing that long COVID was more likely with every single infection. So let's put this all together. Right now, 1 in 35 people in the US have COVID, and that rate will get worse in the coming weeks, probably peaking around January 10th. There are people walking around who do not feel sick and are not coughing or sneezing, but can be breathing out COVID particles into the air and getting you sick. So, I'm advising you to wear a mask as often as possible. I'm advising you to avoid unnecessary exposures. Don't go to a random movie. Don't just do random shit when it's the least safe time of the year. You can't keep getting COVID repeatedly. It is not healthy. It is not safe. It is eating away at all of our collective health. And for the holidays, cancel your gatherings, keep them as small as possible, crack a window, wear a mask as often as possible, ask everyone to take tests beforehand, have supplies on hand when inevitably someone in your family gets COVID from this gathering. Again, just based on the pure numbers, if you don't try to avoid it, you or a family member or a friend are going to get COVID in the next several weeks. And there are ways to avoid it. It's not okay to just keep getting sick. COVID is it's a fundamental paradigm shift. Things that worked before COVID do not work since COVID because it's really contagious and our immunity just does not last, period. So, I don't know what else to say.